Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us and welcome to another session on AI. And now we're talking about a basic introduction to AI. It's very basic, it's wonderful, and we have an amazing presenter with us here today, Alexandra Olmastika from the library. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you, Jana. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here today. This is the very quick introduction to AI. I titled it for students, but the presentation actually it's good for everybody. So if you've never really dealt with AI and you're wondering about some things, or you may want to ask some questions, this is a good session to get started. So I have a presentation that I want to share with you. And I'm going to do that right now at the start so that you have the materials. So I'm going to share some links on the chat that are to two different things. One is the presentation that I'm sharing, and then there's additional resources that I put a list together about prompting, and we're going to talk about that for you to peruse in the future. So give me 1 second. Here we go. That way the links to our materials are here. And if you come back into Teams, you can get access to what I'm going to be sharing on the screen. Okay. But for now, if you would like to check your screen, that's fine. Feel free to ask questions. As we are, discussing materials, and at certain points, I will stop and ask for questions too if you need any clarifications. And I'm gonna try to do my best to share the correct screen, which is critical. So here we go. Right, so welcome to a quick introduction to AI for students. But we are all students here. We are all learning. And with this topic of AI, we are always learning all the time. Let me share this again. Share. There we go. Alrighty. So as you're here today, I want you to know that this is a safe space to talk about AI. And I that this presentation came about as a response to request from HCC. And later it evolved to an initiative that Jana is hosting. So I really appreciate that. So we cover a lot of different topics that are related to artificial intelligence and generative AI through the semester. And this one is the basic introduction. So then one thing that is very important for us to discuss when we're talking about artificial intelligence actually is vocabulary, because we use a lot of terminology here sometimes, and you can feel like, what are we talking about, right? So the first thing is that usually when we're talking about artificial intelligence these days, that means a lot of different things depending on which context you are, right? But artificial intelligence in itself is a field related to computer sciences. Okay. So now when it comes to us, sometimes you're going to hear people talking about large language models or generative AI. So a really common large language model that everybody is kind of like aware of is ChatGPT. So you hear about ChatGPT a lot, right? Some people use the term AI as an umbrella that covers everything. So if you heard about Google Gemini or Microsoft Copilot or ChatGPT, Perplexity, or let's say even Grok, which is really being mentioned in the media recently, if you hear about those, all of those fall under artificial intelligence. But some of them are large language models in which the nature of their service is that they predict words, right? And they can generate content. And then you have other people, you're referring more to them as generative AI, because through generative AI, you can write a prompt that then you feed to a system so that that system gives you what we call an output. Okay. So it is important for you to consider, like, remember, oh, I can write a prompt, I can create a prompt, and this prompt will give me an output. And in this process, it's important for you to be curious. develop a desire to learn about it, because there's a lot of things that are happening right now in terms of how the companies are trying to make profit and how that is being channeled into markets, how it has landed in education with and without our, like, asking for it, right? So um this nature of prompting is important, and it's something that we do discuss here. And I also want you to remember that some of these systems uh, use tokens, right? They give you a certain amount of tokens, so that you can perform operations within them, or they may restrict the amount of transactions that you can do, and prompts. So keep these words in mind. And there's something really important that I want to mention. It's like we need to talk about money, okay? So these models usually run on a freemium model, in which that means that they're going to provide you a little bit for free that you can do. And then they're going to provide you options for upgrading to then have access to more services inside the whichever platform you select, okay? Um, so one thing that I always invite people that I serve to do is, like, please evaluate for free before you make any commitments to, in amount of in terms of money. Because sometimes within these systems, once you start paying for certain services, if you then decide that you're not going to use it anymore, then you don't have access to the same features that you had, or you can't create the same things. So keep that in mind, right? um and the freemium model is a pervasive model when we have technological companies that want us to try their products, right? So that is really important. And I also kind of, like, I always make a warning here. If at some point in your use of these systems you're looking for information specifically, and a service asks you to pay for information, I beg of you, please chat with a librarian, reach out to me, go to the library, and let us know what it is that you're seeking, so that we can try to assess if we have a resource that you can use without paying. Okay, that is very important, so that you can keep a little bit of your money in your pocket, okay, before committing to buying something that you actually may not need. So, um, when you're using the services, it's really important for you to care in a way that perhaps it's a little bit different from just reading information casually and just going with the flow. Okay, so one thing that is important for you to know is that in any case where you're using AI, you need to evaluate the output. You are the one that needs to judge whether that output that you're receiving is something that is usable. The reason why I mention this is because in the conversations around AI, you are going to hear people say things like, the AI knows, the AI gave me information, generative AI, you know, gave me the best advice, right? So there is a tendency to personalize a system that is not human. The system does not discern. Generative AI has rules and constrictions in itself that might appear when you try to break rules within the system. But sometimes those rules are not broken until or implemented until some unfortunate event happens. And if you've been following conversations or reading things about media, um, there are serious issues right now with the alteration of images for pornography. That is something that it's happening and is being addressed in different ways in different countries, right? Or the appropriation of images from artists. That's another issue, right? Um, and there's even people questioning how much of the material that is in the AI databases came from sources that shouldn't have been used in a certain way. Recently, I read an article in which they were detailing that one AI company bought a collection of books. They scanned everything into the AI and then they threw the books away. Okay. So remember that when you're working with artificial intelligence, these companies gather data, scrape it from online sources or from different media, right? And then they throw it into their large language model data set, and then they have algorithms that use predictive technology to place words together. But by now, general artificial intelligence can do a lot more than just predict a word. It can produce media like audio files, images. You can even get spreadsheets out of it. So there's a lot of different things. So you have to care about what is it that you're doing with artificial intelligence. And within the context of what we do here at Houston City College, um, as faculty, students, and staff, we all need to be aware that in the classroom, the authority on the use of AI is the professor. So before you engage in using AI for a project, be very careful about checking your syllabus and understanding if your professor allows the use of artificial intelligence, and if they do so, to what extent. I work with professors that absolutely they have a complete ban of AI in assignments, and there are other professors that they encourage the use of AI or have even revised their courses using AI, right? But one thing is that nobody can take away your capacity as a human to look at information and assess it based on your own experiences and your knowledge and the knowledge that you're deferring to. So, for example, some people tell me when we're talking about AI, and you ask a question, somebody could ask a question about the digital mind, right? So I know I have this book, this physical book right here that an author, Arlindo Oliveira, wrote, and that he went through a process in which he gathered information and he put something together. So I know where this came from. When you're working with AI, you always have to discern where is the information coming from and evaluate that, because sometimes you won't know until you ask. And that prompting AI, it's really critical for us. So when we are using artificial intelligence, uh and I talk about prompting, there's two ways in which you can ask for AI, what to do. One is more like having a conversation. So you could ask a question, or give an instruction, right? And it's usually probably a really short paragraph, right? Or a really short line. Or you can do something that is a little bit more structured, when you actually give detailed instructions of what you want the AI to do. Now, if you ask me, well, how many people are using this and this at this time? Well, now it's really been documented that students are using this a lot. But I also know that people, professors, or people in the community are using AI. And what is happening is that some people think that AI is just a lot to cheat, but that is not the case. Sometimes, AI can help people determine answers to different questions, and also they use it as a space for exploration and creativity. So as you go into the process of determining what you are going to use AI for, keep that in mind, um, because that's something that's important. Depending on what type of project you're gonna have, that could lead you into making prompts that are simple or prompts that are very lengthy. So it is up to you. Now, um, when we're talking about um these platforms, there are some things, some ideas, keywords that you need to know. Things that you need to be careful and watch out for. One of the first ones that we talk a lot is bias. Bias refers to the position that a certain source of information is going to have. So within the products, you might find that maybe the product has a tendency, let's say, to favor things that you say, or the language may sound, the language that you read, that it's not contrarian, or it doesn't really evaluate, right, what you are placing it, because it's responsive to the instructions. So there are, inherent biases inside AI that you are not going to be aware about, but you're going to see from the outputs. And also, we don't know about those biases because we do not know what type of text was inputted or commands were inputted into the system. Another thing that you need to be aware is the whole hallucinations. People are not talking about this too much, but it's still happening. Okay, so generative AI uh, can generate information that is fake. In text, I've caught AI making mistakes, and I've been kind of like, oh, this portion of the text is actually not accurate, and then it comes back and apologizes and say, I'm sorry. Yes, you caught a mistake, and I'm like, no, well, and I can fix it. But that power of discernment, of you being the judge of the content that you're getting out of AI, is really important. Another thing that you need to watch out for is privacy. Whatever you are placing inside those systems is going to a data set, okay? And who knows where that might end. So be very careful. Please don't place personal information. Please don't place information from other people. Uh, be very careful about asking for medical advice. Please don't do that. Please consult with a real human doctor, right? If you need to talk to a counselor, HCC has counselors that you can set an appointment with. If you need advice, talk to an advisor. So I think by now, everybody has heard about different stories of people like seeking advice using generative AI and then making life altering choices. So be very careful with that. In regards to plagiarism, if you're using AI, some systems are going to, for example, citation systems like MLA or APA are going to ask you to cite that you use AI. And some people are even implementing a transparency statement in which you communicate the way that you are using AI, right? So in academia and in research, AI is a topic that is spread through all the fields. And if you're using AI, you have to let people know how you're using it. Within the context of HCC, if, let's say, our professor says that we cannot use AI and we use it, that is considered plagiarism. Okay. Or if you if you prompt AI to write a whole paper for you, absolutely it's going to be plagiarism. Okay, so don't do that. Use it for maybe brainstorming, depending on what your professor says, to get ideas. I advise sometimes students to make outlines of papers because sometimes we struggle with organizing the way that we're gonna put our thoughts. So if you want like a predictive approach to what could I do, that is something that you could try. But always check on your professors. And then one of the things that people worry about the most is over reliance, which is kind of like having the AI take over your thinking capacity and your thinking powers, right? And then you not using that part of your brain to actually create content in any form, art, engineering, sciences, English, right? So your unique creative capacity, your voice, the way you think, and what you bring to the table, which is something that is really important. Sometimes I work with students that they don't recognize that their story, their history, their lived experience is a source of knowledge, right? So I want to validate that, and make sure that you understand that you are building, right, an approach to your studies in which you should be able to look at all the tools that are available and decide which are you going to use to get the best, most successful output and outcome in alignment with your goals. So watch out for some things, all right? So when I'm talking about prompt styles, usually right now, I'm going to take a little moment here and say, the 2 or 3, I'm gonna go for 2 because we don't have, I can't go the whole hour, right? ChatGPT is one of the models that people use a lot, right? And I'm bringing this up so that you can see like different tiers and how much that costs. And usually ChatGPT until now, the free model has been free, totally free, no ads. It seems like that is about to change, but I don't have information about when it's happening. So if you've never tried ChatGPT, you can go in there and you can play around with it. Gemini right now has a free plan for students. So is that something that you might want to try? Go ahead and do that. Uh, I highly recommend you try them out and then you compare. Try running the same exercise in different platforms. Are there more platforms? Absolutely. The reason why I highlight these two is that Gemini runs under the Android system and, it belongs to Alphabet Company and it's pretty popular at the time. And Gemini is now in conversations with Apple. So if you're an Apple user, there is a chance that at a certain time, you might end up finding Gemini integrated in some way, some fashion into Apple. And then one of the things that I highlighted specifically about ChatGPT is that ChatGPT is a self-contained platform. So ChatGPT does not respond to Microsoft. We don't respond to Apple, although it does have some certain ties with Microsoft, and it doesn't. We don't belong. We don't do business with that much with Google. So when you are assessing um generative AI tools, you want to know who's the company that owns that, and you want to know where the information is going to. Okay. um Nowadays you might find that all of a sudden your phone is displaying AI content that is being integrated here and there. So one thing that sometimes people ask is kind of like, how can I get myself out of this environment, right? I don't want to do anything with AI. And that's your choice. And it's becoming increasingly difficult to this, like, decouple some things from AI because of the ways the companies are bringing them in. So that is why I mentioned that your capacity to discern this is something that came out for AI. This is something that did not come out from AI. It's something that you need to work on. Okay. So at this point, I'm going to stop here for a couple of minutes and see if we have any questions or comments that you might want to share. See any pressing questions, concerns? You can.
Yeah, feel free to unmute to ask your questions or type it in the chat.
Okay, I don't see any questions for now. Thank you, Jana. Let's keep going through. So we were checking, these pricing structures, right? And I have free versions, I have paid versions of some platforms because I like to try different things and assess what's the difference. Um, I can't recommend one or the other. I highly recommend you try them out yourselves, okay? One thing that I'm gonna highlight. Oh, I saw Melissa was typing. See, yep. One thing that I'm going to highlight is that if you notice, if you're in these platforms, they look similar. Okay. So you're gonna have a list on the left of topics that you could this is going to be like your log of interactions with the system, and then you're going to have some functions, right? uh and they do not work the same. For me, one is not better than the other. Yes, I'm going to give example of prompts. So since you asked, Melissa, if there's something that you may want me to ask about, I'll wait for you. If there's something that you want me to ask about, just let me know. And if you notice, both systems look the same way, okay? If you click on the plus, one thing that Gemini has that ChatGPT does not have is a different product called NotebookLM. And NotebookLM, if at some point you're able to try it, I highly recommend that you do so. It's an excellent product for brainstorming, analyzing text, creating study guides. I know a lot of people that use it. It can even create a podcast. So some of the things that you're seeing on YouTube, in some content is being created on NotebookLM. Okay, so which of these two? Go ahead and try. Try the same prompt. Oh, excellent. Perfect. Okay. So I see what factors should be in a prompt from Smith, like perspective, content, output, and then Melissa's also what a conversation style will look like versus a structure style. Perfect. So those are questions that I cover here. So let's go back to that. So when you're talking about prompt styles, you know, the conversation style is pretty much like us having a conversation right now. Some people just start by asking a basic question and then they define and they go a little bit more into detail about what to do, right? I like to say that if you've never practiced prompting, starting with a simple question is fine, right? Because you're just learning to use these systems. Now, if you start with a simple question in a conversation style, um, and then you get an output. Based on that output, you are actually interacting with the system and manipulating the AI system to give you certain results. Okay. So, for example, if I'm on ChatGPT and I'm going to do, and I want to prompt about, I'm gonna ask about what are some practices to be safe using ChatGPT. And the system is gonna give me an output, right? And I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna do the same thing in Gemini, the competition, and see what happens. And then you could even run the prompt in a different way, right? So now what happens is that you're gonna get an output that is based on the system predicting words, right? And if you notice on the left side, now I have an entry for these conversations. And it's telling you verify information, the hallucinations. Also, be careful using AI for professionals. So it's giving some things, right? Now, if I'm having a conversation with the system, right? A conversation, which is I'm prompting the system now it's giving me some options. This is where the interaction with large language models gets very interesting because these systems can predict things that we are not necessarily think about, right? So in that case, that's something that you need to be aware of and document in your process because you want to know, what was I thinking and what happened in the moment that I started interacting and getting different results. Now, this is the same output, same question, but run um through Gemini. So one of the things that you're going to notice is that immediately Gemini is offering like some links to where did they get that from, right? So in a way, one thing that is really peculiar about these two systems at this point is that you're not getting any type of link from ChatGPT, whereas Gemini, in a way, sources information and gives you a source immediately. Okay. But is that source something that maybe is the best one that you could use? That's like a whole nother conversation. Okay. So if you wanted to amplify this conversation and take it through another step, maybe you will determine the direction if you wanted to, find or generate more content about bias, right? Or about a specific safe practice. So pretty much if you're having a conversation, you're just going back and forth with the system, right? Now, if let's say you want to take it to the next level, meaning like you're not going to do you're just not going to ask a question. You are going to build a prompt because you want a full output. Then there are some constraints and some ideas that you can actually start with. And these have to do, I have like 6 categories here. Let me see if I can scroll this down. They're perfect. So when you are actually composing a prompt is it can be pretty long, right? But you're going to give the AI a role. You're going to give it instructions if you, depending on the number or, the type of activity you're going to perform. You could ask for formats. You may put constraints in the system. You can even personalize saying, who is this for? And you can even talk about quality, in terms of accuracy and length. So if I'm going to do something like that, and I'm going to build a new prompt, I'm going to instruct and prompt for something a little bit more specific. So I would do a prompt like this. First of all, some people will tell you to be kind to the AI, okay? Be courteous. Because as you're working with the system, you're also training it. Where we're going to be. So I'm asking it to be an expert in prompt making, and I'm going to ask for the AI to prepare a chart of best practices for creating a prompt. Okay. Now I'm going to put a constraint for the audience. I'm also going to say so I'm putting certain instructions in here, and one thing that I sometimes like to joke a lot. So I'm going to say, please to reduce stress. Okay. And I'm going to take the same prompt. Now I'm running that, and I'm going to run that through Gemini with a new chat, and we're going to see what's going to happen. So ChatGPT is working, and it delivered a jovial, low-stress chart designed for college students, followed by a how-to chart in MLA with formats and links that you can use in class, right? Now, this chart right here, if you notice, it has some of the things that I mentioned, like, give context, define the type of output, set the tone, break big tasks down, and then it has what it means, a jovial tip, and an example of how that will look, right? So this right here on the right side, those can be considered prompts, right? And as I scroll down, I even have more outputs from it. And then why this works. So the AI, notice here, is citing DigitalOcean, OpenAI, which is the company that runs ChatGPT, and then is giving information about how to cite the AI. And now this one is interesting. So this part right here is giving you code. I didn't ask for that. That right there, I'm kind of like, that's like kind of faulty. I don't like that output. And then here is giving um citation, like links to the MLA style. And this one right here, I highly would recommend. Big Guru and the LibGuide. Big Guru is from a .com website. I've never seen Big Guru in my life. I'm gonna click this because now I'm curious. You remember what I told you at the beginning to be curious and to evaluate? I want to see what this is because maybe it has something that could be useful. And this is from an academic institution. And then it also gave me something about stress reduction, and then it's giving me additional things that I could do. Okay, let's check what Gemini did. Okay, so Gemini, that's the chart from Gemini. Now it has a it determined to predict a best practice column, what that means, and then an example instead of make a essay. That's interesting. So you have two different ways of prompting. And then if you're a Gemini user, you can export things from here to your Google account. Now this one is giving pretty much the close to perfect MLA citation for how to write it in MLA. And then it also has a link to Style MLA. Okay. So whether you can determine which one you like best, right? I did not like that output right here with the code because I'm not doing any type of coding. In terms of the table, if you notice, the one from Gemini has way more details than the one from ChatGPT, right? And then you are the person that needs to decide which one are you going to use, or if you're going to combine, because there's nothing stopping you from dropping all of that content into one Word document and then telling the two AIs that that you want them to get the predict the best content out of that. You can limit source to academic or peer review content. Can you ask if that output was a hallucination? Oh, okay. So to answer the question one, let's do this a little bit different so that you see it. I want you to see what the AI would do. Okay. So imagine for a second that instead of me not saying, like doing the prompt a little bit different, that I ask for this. So now I'm changing the constraint. And this is, I'm instructing the AI to find a source on the web on an educational site for best practices about AI. And here we have some results, okay? And then you will have the link right here from Nation, from Arvix, and both, I know these sources are legit. Nature and Arvix are using the sciences, right? So this is a different approach, right? And it's giving you examples. So then I will have to go verify, and I could tell you gotta be careful here because you could extract text, right? And then create something like that, right? Now, can I ask it if the output was a hallucination? I can go back to my history and then say, and let's see what it replies. There you have it. Possibly parts of it could be. it's likely reliable. Where, and then it's assessing or predicting the assessment, right? So one thing that I'm going to highlight here that is really important, and people usually don't talk about it this way. For me, as a librarian, right, I worked with information for a very, very long time in my life. By now, I can say I've been working in libraries for 30 years, right? So throughout my career as as an information professional, I relied 100% on knowing exactly where my content comes from. Okay? Because I know that when I know where my content comes from, when I am preparing materials, I have a certain level of accountability that I demonstrate with my sources. Okay? Because as a professional and as a graduate student and all of those things throughout my life, right? When you are producing content, you are being accountable and responsible for what you're delivering. When we use AI to generate content, we don't know the source. If we do the conversation style, right? So what I did at the beginning, the prompt, I know by now that when I prompt AI for this type of content, the content is coming from within AI because it is in the database already, right? But I still don't have a source. The source in itself is ChatGPT. But when we did the second prompt about, hey, can you go identify some things on the web? We're using different capabilities that AI has to do a web search and then retrieve certain results. Now, if you notice, the first two results that AI brought back, one was from Nature magazine and the other one was from Arvix. Those two belong in the what they sometimes people call the hard sciences, right? So these are high level publishing journals that are peer reviewed, but it went to the sciences. I never asked AI to go to the science website to find a source. That's what it did. What if I was working in the arts? You know, so there's even more constraints that I can place in the system in terms of identifying sources, right? So keep that in mind. That's why if you start with a simple prompt, you should consider what other things can I do? Where do I want to go? What type of source? And I haven't even demonstrating that yet. Let me see if I get there. Um, and it's really important that you consider copyright, okay? In that context. So do we have any additional questions or comments at this time? Some of the work that I have here is based on the work of Molex on his book. It's a fantastic book, and if you have a chance, you should check that out. But the thing is that with AI, some things are coming. You have to stay up to date because of how fast the field is changing. So, when it comes to ethical use, ask your instructors, please. Follow the guidelines. Use AI responsibly. I mean, in all transparency, there are people that use technological tools for things that are illegal. Don't do it. Okay? Um Sometimes the system, like the only time that I ask a question that was a little bit strange, I asked a question about searching the dark web and the AI refused to answer that question. That was probably like last year. And that was me like testing boundaries. And there are some things that if you try to do in AI, like for example, let's say you want to find somebody's phone number, the AI is not going to do that, right? So you have to be careful with and consider, appropriate use of technology in terms of what can you do. And of course, you can search the web like all the things that AI will not do, and then there's other platforms that are allowing certain things to happen that should not happen. So be very careful. Use it responsibly and cite it properly. In the presentation, there are links to how is that you can do citations in for MLA and APA. And in addition, one thing that I'm going to mention about copyright is that when you are using your prompts for AI, um, the prompt in itself is something that you cannot copyright, right? And this is all under guidance of the government. So if you ever want to know what is the content that you need to understand about copyright, you always have to go to copyright.gov, and they are the authority that will tell you, okay, this is what can happen in terms of copyright. So I have additional resources that are directly linked for this, and you can scan this QR code in the presentation or go to the link. And I'm gonna go to that link real quick because I want to highlight what I included in that page. So, um, the additional resources page that I have are related to prompting, and ways in which there's a modified content from this presentation is in this handout. And then at the bottom, you have 5 different links that are related to how to prompt. This is exclusively for that. Then citations and citations via ACC. Okay. So one of the reasons that I am encouraging you and and talking so much about prompting in this presentation is because at this time, the way that these technologies are being deployed, we are not asking, right, the companies what they should do for us. We are finding that these products are emerging in the market, and then all of a sudden, we have our students, we have our instructors, we have our librarians, and we are facing, this emergence of AI. And you need to discern and practice critical thinking when you are trying to understand what is happening, because the changes are pretty fast. And sometimes, changes within platforms are pretty fast. Okay. So, uh, there's a part that of me that wants to invite you. Number one, always remember, you have to check with your faculty. You have to talk to your instructors and see what is their policy about AI use in the classroom. Are they allowing me to, use it or not, or what constraints or what limits they want, right? Because our faculty are the individuals that are helping us understand how is it that we're going to do this. Okay. That's one thing. So in the context of ACC as a community college student, please talk to your faculty. If you need help, let us know. Faculty is here to help, and it's very important that you keep that in mind. Now, as a practical, private individual, I want you to exercise discernment and think about, where are these technologies appear? Is your phone doing something? Remember, one thing that I didn't tell you at the beginning that you should consider is that when you are engaging with AI products, I highly recommend that you create a separate account from your phone, from work, so that if you are testing these types of products, that you do it in a unique account. So the account that I was showing you today is an account that I have for testing the free versions, right? But it's not tied to my phone. Please protect your privacy. That's very important, because at some point, I don't know what level of integration we're going to see within the platforms. And sometimes it's really hard to like opt out and say, I don't want to, do anything. And I have students that are visiting and telling me, I don't want to touch AI. I don't want to do it. That's your prerogative and that's your right, right? So keep that in mind. How are you feeling about this? Oh my goodness. So professors, to see that Smith, you're asking about using integration. So last semester, I am a graduate student at the University of Houston. I'm working on my doctorate, and I took an AI class. And in regards to useful integrations, we evaluated probably, oh my, I can't even tell you how many products it was. So I would say that depending on the type, one thing that I will say is that I have, at this point, I don't have information about integrations between generative artificial intelligence or any platforms and Canvas. I want to put that on the side, right? Now, but in terms of products and platforms that you can use to create different types of materials, I would say probably one of the most powerful ones are the ones that are related to creating lesson plans and class activities. So I will follow up with like a list of the ones that we use. Lloyd mentioned something about image generation. There are some outstanding platforms for creating images. And of course, that in itself has its controversy with the art world because there's a fine line between the prompt, the artist, what it is human, and what it is to create. Okay. Um, One thing that I will highlight, and I think I can show you that real quick, is that the presentation that I showed today on the screen was made with the outline. So I create one. I'm gonna show you that I create my outlines, right? Because I want to have my content is mine, my references, my text, everything is mine. Now, if at some point then I want to take that content somewhere else, then I use that platform. The platform that I'm using right now for creating presentations is called Gamma, and there is a free version of it. I highly recommend you try that. For me, it's been a little bit of a game changer in terms of creating presentations that I can export to PowerPoint, share with people that I work with. Um, so I'm gonna show you that real quick. Let me share. So if you earlier today, I never done this before. Earlier today, I pull all my content from that handout that you have on the resources here. And from this content that I created for a print handout, then I created the presentation that I share with you. And let me go all the way back. So I have a different variety of presentations that I make. This one was last week, the Navigating AI, and some others that are for the libraries, even materials for training. And this is a really powerful, different platform. I've been waiting for Microsoft to do something similar, but I haven't seen it yet. And if you're going to create, you can generate from pasting your own text and telling the AI to keep using exclusively your text. You can import a file, and you can also create from scratch. So if I can tell you about one that has been very, very useful for me as an educator, is being Gamma. Um, let's check. Okay, is there the online information. Okay, one thing I didn't share this earlier, but I'm going to show you this on the screen because earlier there was a comment about academic sources. um if you are interested in seeing Semantic Scholar, if you're interested in seeing a unique way of finding uh peer review scholarly information, I would highly recommend that you check Semantic Scholar. Semantic Scholar is it's the product of a nonprofit organization that is dedicating itself to placing papers online from all fields or sciences. And let's say, for example, we are working because some of our students they write about Maslow's hierarchy. Maslow's. I'm just gonna put Maslow's and needs, right? So, if you are working on a topic and you may want to see some sources online, Semantic Scholar it's a brand new thing that it's gaining a lot of popularity. Having said that, as I said before, if you are using a product online like this, I do not want you to pay. Okay? You can always check with your librarians. You can check with tutoring. You can check with your professors, right? There are even some functionalities that we can apply in Google Advanced Search or Google Scholar to retrieve information for free. So yeah, next week is AI as a research assistant, brainstorming, exploring, and organizing. In that session, we're going to talk a little bit about NotebookLM and how NotebookLM can help you organize your work, right, as a student. Always following guidelines. Try it out. It's very, very different. One thing that I'm also going to stress that it's important for us to do is that depending on your field, right? Let's say what we're gonna do after we graduate. I want you to invite you to be curious about learning how is AI being integrated into your field. If you're going to be a nurse, if you're going to be an engineer, if you're going to be a teacher, right? Whichever psychologist, anthropologist, sociologist, artist, I want you to know and I want you to go forth and discover how is it that the integration of these technologies is having impact in my field, and how is that related to ethical practices in the field. Okay, that's something that we sometimes don't talk a lot about. But when 3D printing came out and I was working with 3D printer, I started telling people you need to understand how 3D people is going to work in the medical field, because this is coming. And now we see that the technology that is there, or in construction, right? So Bernard is saying that he likes AI because he enjoys making images. But one thing in my family is dangerous. It can be dangerous, Bernard. But that's why you have to, focus a lot on ethical practices. What is right and what is wrong. And sometimes that depends on sometimes people want to say that depends on like what they believe, but you have to consider like shared practices in society and the rule of law. Like you cannot break copyright, we cannot steal content. So things that you wouldn't do in real life, you don't do it with AI, right? Any other questions, comments? Okay. So in the context of ACC, no plagiarizing. Ask your professors what to do, right? Don't make it, don't use it to make content that will harm somebody, right? We don't do that. That is very important. Okay. So I see Dr. Taylor is typing. And guys, I really want to appreciate your interactions and your questions. I know Melissa wanted that prompt, but I'm always telling people you have to check with your professors. You have to cite it, because faculty are responsible for what our students learn. And in the other presentation last week, one thing that I always highlight is that when HCC is giving you your credentials, what we're saying is that the work that you did met standards of quality and that you learned. So one of the greatest, pitfalls with AI is that if you use AI in a way that is authorized, it's like we can't really say that you are developing your expertise, because it's a system that is doing the work, not you. So with that being said, go forth, work hard. If you have any questions, reach out. I don't know, but and also I want to remind everybody that ACC has an artificial intelligence bachelor's degree. So if you get really interested in this, you can pursue a whole bachelor's degree with us. You guys have a wonderful day.
Thank you, everybody, for coming and participating.